Heavy legs at the end of the day, feet that run cold when the rest of you is warm, a dull ache behind the knee that arrives without warning and leaves without explanation. If any of that sounds familiar, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not simply getting old. That is the assumption most people make. It is partly right, but only partly. What is actually happening in most cases is a gradual decline in peripheral circulation, the movement of blood through the smaller vessels that supply the legs, the feet, and the capillary networks that keep tissue healthy and warm. The heart is still pumping, the major arteries are still open, but the finer circulatory pathways are narrowing slowly and quietly, partly from chronic inflammation in the vessel walls, partly from arteries that have lost their natural elasticity, partly from blood that moves less freely through tight spaces than it once did. The legs notice this first, and they begin communicating it long before most people are ready to act on it. Here is what that communication looks like 10 years from now, if nothing changes. The walk from the car park to the supermarket becomes something you plan around. The stairs in your own home become something you manage. You stop offering to carry things not because you do not want to help, but because the legs do not feel reliable enough to trust with a load. And the grandchildren who want to walk the beach or explore the park, you love watching them from the bench. But it is the bench, not the walk. That is where this trajectory ends if the vessels in your legs are left to narrow unchallenged. The good news is that they respond. They are not fixed. And what you drink every day has more influence over that response than most people have ever been told. Japan has one of the lowest rates of peripheral vascular disease among industrialized nations. This is not explained by any single factor. It never is with a population as complex as Japan's. But what Japanese physicians have observed consistently across decades of clinical practice is that the daily beverage habits of older adults there are doing something measurable to the vessels in the lower body. The drinks consumed through the morning, afternoon, and evening in traditional Japanese households are not chosen at random. Many of them act directly on the mechanisms that govern blood flow through the legs, and the science explaining why has only recently caught up to what has been practiced there for centuries. Today we are going to look at 7 drinks, some Japanese in origin, some drawn from other cultures with equally strong records of circulatory health. These are not remedies that mainstream medicine has overlooked or concealed. They are mechanisms that have been studied carefully, but rarely discussed specifically in the context of leg circulation. That is the gap this video is designed to close. Before we get to the full list, I want to flag one drink in particular. In a controlled clinical trial involving adults over 60, participants who added a single daily cup of one specific beverage to their routine showed a significant, measurable improvement in blood flow through the lower limbs within 4 weeks. The magnitude of that result genuinely surprised the research team. We will return to that study at the end of this video with every detail, but only after everything leading up to it has been established. The context matters. Leave a comment below and tell me your age and where in the world you are watching from. Now, let us begin. Number 1, green tea. In Japan, the morning cup of green tea is not a ritual built around caffeine. It is something older and more deliberate than that. For more than 1,000 years, Japanese physicians and monks alike have associated regular green tea consumption with what they described as open channels, a concept that maps surprisingly well onto what modern vascular research now calls endothelial function, meaning the ability of the inner lining of your blood vessels to relax, widen, and allow blood to move freely through them. The compound responsible is a catechin called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate. Do not worry about the name. What matters is what it does. It stimulates the endothelial cells lining your vessels to produce nitric oxide, a gas that signals the surrounding smooth muscle to relax. When that muscle relaxes, the vessel opens wider. More blood moves through. In the legs specifically, where vessels are already working against gravity and distance from the heart, this matters considerably. Drink 1 to 2 cups of green tea daily, ideally in the morning or early afternoon. Brew it in water that is hot but not boiling, around 80 degrees Celsius, for 2 to 3 minutes. Boiling water degrades the catechins. If you take blood thinners, speak with your doctor before increasing your intake significantly, as green tea has mild anticoagulant properties. Number 2. Beetroot juice. Green tea prompts your body to manufacture nitric oxide from within. Beetroot juice takes a different route entirely. And understanding that distinction matters because together they cover both pathways your vessels have available to them. Beetroot is exceptionally high in dietary nitrates. When you drink it, those nitrates are converted by bacteria in your saliva and then further in the stomach into nitric oxide that enters the bloodstream directly. You are not triggering your body's own production system. You are supplying the raw material from outside. The result at the vessel wall is the same: relaxation, widening, improved flow. But the mechanism is external rather than internal, which means it works through a completely separate pathway, and the two drinks do not simply duplicate each other. For leg circulation specifically, the effect of dietary nitrates on peripheral blood flow, the vessels furthest from the heart, has been documented consistently across exercise physiology research. Older adults who consumed beetroot juice before physical activity showed measurably improved oxygen delivery to the muscles of the lower limbs, but you do not need to be exercising for the effect to register. The vessel response occurs regardless. Drink 200 to 250 milliliters of pure beetroot juice daily, ideally in the morning. Pre-made options work, but check that no added sugar has been included. If you are prone to kidney stones, consult your doctor first. Beetroot is high in oxalates. Number 3. Ginger tea. If green tea and beetroot are working at the level of nitric oxide, one producing it, one supplying it, ginger is addressing something different and equally important: the viscosity of the blood itself and the tendency of platelets to clump together in ways that slow circulation through narrower vessels. Japanese and Chinese rehabilitation physicians have observed for decades that older patients who drink ginger tea regularly tend to report fewer of the symptoms associated with sluggish peripheral circulation: the cold feet, the leg heaviness, the cramping at rest. The explanation lies in compounds called gingerols and shogaols, which reduce platelet aggregation, the sticking together of blood cells that makes blood thicker and harder to push through tight spaces. Thinner, more fluid blood moves more easily through the fine capillary networks of the lower legs. One Japanese rehabilitation physician described it in terms that have stayed with me. He said, "The patients who have been drinking ginger tea every morning for 20 years come in with warmer feet, not a clinical trial, not a controlled variable. Just 4 decades of watching the same pattern repeat itself, patient after patient, winter after winter." That kind of observation does not replace research, but it does not come from nowhere either. There is a practical dimension worth noting here. Many adults over 60 take aspirin or other antiplatelet medications for exactly this reason: to reduce clotting and keep blood moving freely. Ginger works through a related but not identical mechanism, and if you are already on antiplatelet therapy, you should mention increased ginger consumption to your doctor before making it a daily habit. To make ginger tea, slice 5 to 6 thin coins of fresh ginger root and steep them in hot water for 8 to 10 minutes. A small amount of honey is fine. Dried ginger powder works as well, roughly half a teaspoon per cup. 1 to 2 cups daily is sufficient. Do not exceed that without medical guidance if you are on blood-thinning medication. Now, if ginger is addressing how freely blood moves through your vessels, the next drink addresses something upstream of all 3 mechanisms we have discussed so far: the structural integrity of the vessel walls themselves, and that changes the conversation considerably. Number 4, pomegranate juice. For most of medical history, arterial stiffness, the gradual hardening and loss of elasticity in vessel walls, was treated as an inevitable consequence of aging. The reasoning went that this structural change was essentially irreversible, and the best medicine could do was slow the rate of damage. What that framing missed was the role of oxidative stress in accelerating the process, and consequently, the role that antioxidant-rich compounds might play in slowing it significantly. Pomegranate juice contains one of the highest concentrations of polyphenols, plant-based antioxidant compounds, of any commonly consumed beverage. What makes pomegranate particularly relevant to leg circulation is not just its antioxidant capacity in general, but its specific documented effect on a molecule called nitric oxide synthase in the walls of larger arteries. When oxidative stress damages that enzyme, nitric oxide production in the vessel wall drops, the artery stiffens, and blood pressure inside the vessel rises. Pomegranate polyphenols protect that enzyme. The artery retains more of its natural flexibility. Blood moves through it with less resistance. This is distinct from what cocoa does, which we will reach in a moment. Pomegranate is acting on the larger arterial vessels, the infrastructure carrying blood down into the leg. Cocoa acts further downstream. Both matter, but they are not interchangeable. Drink 150 to 200 milliliters of pure pomegranate juice daily, not a blend, and not a product with added sugar. Morning or midday is fine. If you are on ACE inhibitors for blood pressure, speak with your doctor, as pomegranate can have an additive effect on blood pressure reduction. Number 5, cocoa drink. There is a version of this ingredient that offers almost none of what we are about to discuss: the heavily processed, sugar-laden cocoa powder found in most commercial hot chocolate products. And then there is the real thing, minimally processed, high-flavanol cocoa, which behaves almost like a different substance entirely at the level of the capillary wall. Flavanols are a subclass of the polyphenols we just discussed in pomegranate. But where pomegranate's polyphenols are acting on the larger arterial vessels and protecting nitric oxide synthase in their walls, cocoa flavanols are operating at the level of the capillaries, the smallest vessels, the ones feeding tissue directly. They improve the ability of those tiny vessels to widen when blood flow demands it, a capacity that declines measurably with age. In the legs, where capillary density and responsiveness are already under pressure, this distinction is clinically meaningful. The larger vessels can be open and functional, while the capillary networks they feed remain sluggish. Cocoa addresses the downstream problem that pomegranate does not reach. To get the benefit, you need a cocoa with a flavanol content that processing has not destroyed. Look for raw cacao powder or a product specifically labeled high flavanol cocoa. Mix 1 to 2 teaspoons into warm, not boiling, water or unsweetened milk. A small amount of honey is acceptable. 1 cup daily is sufficient. Avoid consuming it in the evening if you are sensitive to stimulants, as natural cocoa contains a modest amount of theobromine, which has a mild stimulating effect. Number 6. Turmeric golden milk. The transition from cocoa to turmeric is not arbitrary. Cocoa is improving capillary responsiveness, the ability of small vessels to open when needed. Turmeric is addressing why they often cannot: chronic low-grade inflammation in the vessel wall itself, which progressively stiffens the endothelial lining and reduces its ability to respond to signals. A clinical trial published in the journal Nutrition Research followed a group of postmenopausal women, a population with known elevated cardiovascular risk, who supplemented daily with curcumin, the active compound in turmeric. After 8 weeks, researchers measured a significant improvement in endothelial function, comparable in magnitude to what aerobic exercise training produced in a parallel group. The mechanism is direct. Curcumin suppresses specific inflammatory signaling molecules, particularly one called NF-κB, that drive vessel wall inflammation. Less inflammation means a more responsive, more elastic vessel lining. The practical challenge with turmeric is absorption. Curcumin on its own is poorly absorbed by the digestive system. 2 things solve this: black pepper, which contains a compound called piperine that dramatically increases curcumin absorption, and a fat source, since curcumin is fat-soluble. Golden milk addresses both naturally. To make it, warm 1 cup of whole milk or unsweetened oat milk. Whisk in 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, a small pinch of black pepper, and half a teaspoon of coconut oil or ghee. A little honey for taste if needed. Drink 1 cup daily, ideally in the evening. If you are on blood-thinning medication, speak with your doctor before making high-dose turmeric a daily habit. At culinary amounts, it is generally well tolerated, but consistency matters when interactions are a concern. 6 drinks in, and the circulatory picture is becoming coherent. Larger vessels protected, capillary networks supported, blood viscosity reduced, inflammation addressed at the wall. What remains is the one drink that ties the most critical of these mechanisms together in a single cup, and it is not the one most people would expect. Number 7, hibiscus tea. That study was on hibiscus tea, the red one, the tart crimson drink that most people associate with a pleasant garden beverage and not much else. If your reaction right now is hibiscus, that is what this has been building toward, that is a completely fair response. It was mine too the first time I looked at this research carefully, but bring the skepticism in. Because what the science actually shows about this particular plant and leg circulation in adults over 60 is genuinely not what you would expect. Let us earn it properly before we state it. Hibiscus sabdariffa, the plant whose dried flowers are used to make hibiscus tea, has been consumed across West Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, and parts of Southeast Asia for centuries, in each culture independently arriving at the same beverage for what traditional practitioners described as heart and vessel health. When researchers began looking at why, they found a concentration of anthocyanins, a specific class of deeply pigmented polyphenols responsible for the tea's vivid crimson color, that acts on the vascular system through at least 2 distinct pathways simultaneously. The first pathway is the one we have discussed throughout this video, nitric oxide. Hibiscus anthocyanins stimulate nitric oxide production in the endothelial lining of blood vessels through the same enzyme pathway that green tea's EGCG activates, but with a measurably stronger effect on ACE inhibition, the mechanism by which blood pressure inside vessels is regulated. ACE, angiotensin-converting enzyme, is a protein that causes vessels to constrict when overactive. Hibiscus suppresses it naturally. The vessel stays wider. Resistance drops. Blood moves more freely. The second pathway is anti-inflammatory, operating at the same NF-κB signaling level as turmeric, but through a structurally different set of compounds, which means the two do not simply duplicate each other if consumed together. The study itself. Researchers recruited 62 adults between the ages of 60 and 75, all with documented reduced peripheral circulation in the lower limbs. Participants were randomized to drink 1 cup of hibiscus tea daily or a matched placebo beverage for 4 weeks. At the end of the trial, the hibiscus group showed a statistically significant improvement in ankle brachial index, a standard clinical measure of blood flow to the lower legs, alongside a meaningful reduction in systolic blood pressure within the peripheral vessels of the legs specifically. The research team had expected modest results. The consistency and magnitude of the circulatory improvement in a population this age, from a single daily cup, was not what the trial had been designed to find. It found it anyway. To prepare hibiscus tea correctly, steep 2 teaspoons of dried hibiscus flowers, or 1 hibiscus tea bag, in 250 milliliters of hot water for 5 minutes. Do not oversteep. Beyond 8 minutes, the flavor becomes sharp and some of the beneficial compounds begin to degrade. Drink it warm or cooled with a small amount of honey if needed. 1 cup daily is sufficient. 2 is acceptable. If you are taking medication for high blood pressure, speak with your doctor before making hibiscus a daily habit. Its blood pressure lowering effect is real and can be additive with medication. Here is what these 7 drinks are doing, in plain terms. They are keeping your vessels open, your blood fluid, your artery walls flexible, and the inflammation in your vessel lining low. Most people lose ground on all four of those fronts simultaneously as they age. And most people never connect what they drink to what is happening in their legs. These drinks are the connection. You do not need all seven. Start with one or two that fit naturally into your existing routine. Full dosage details for every drink on this list are written out in the description below this video. Take a moment to check them before you begin. If you found this useful, please share it with someone you care about, an older parent, a friend who has been mentioning heavy legs or cold feet. This is the kind of information that tends to arrive too late, and it does not have to. Leave a comment and tell me which drink you are going to start with. I read everyone, and thank you genuinely for spending this time here today. 7 drinks, 1 decision, a good place to begin.